rather childlike, and you're immediately going to trigger certain chemical reactions that human beings have towards feeling protective towards children. It's very sneaky what Tezuka knew, and he taught me well. But to combine that with violence and sexuality, the tension of characters that look like that being thrown into totally adult situations, into danger, into erotic situations. The tension of that, as Richard said, is highly addictive. This is why anime and manga fans are just otaku, they're obsessed, because you're in this state of tension constantly as you're enjoying this style of entertainment, and that's what I wanted for Elfquest. That's how I wanted our audience to feel about it. And fortunately, we did capture that lightning in a bottle, and that's what happened.
And here's something that you don't know, that I don't think we've ever talked about on a panel before, but this is Silicon, and it's our first convention and your first convention after a long time, so what the heck, you're going to get a little nugget that very few know about. Elfquest has been around since 1978. Elfquest was not our first choice for the title of this series. We came up with, it was down there on the list. One of them was Cutter's Quest, The New Dawn, Hobbs Land. You know, Hob from hobgoblins, it's a European term for, you know, little nasty, impish, fairy-type creatures. Hobbs Land. Maybe one or two others, and then there was this thing, Elfquest, that neither one of us liked very much because when it was brand new, Elfquest, you really have to kind of work your mouth around to say it. It doesn't fall trippingly from the tongue. But somehow that's what we settled upon. Do you remember at all what our decision-making thoughts were?
Simplicity. You know, there was some concern that if we had the word elf in our comic, people would immediately think of Santa Claus. Because that's what American audiences at least usually associate elves with, or people or cookies maybe. But Elfquest seemed to be the simplest and most straightforward and honest title we could give the series, because that's exactly what it was. It was a quest for our lead character, Cutter, our heroic elf. It was his hero's journey, and we were going to take people right through it all the way to the end. So there just didn't seem ultimately any better name that we could come up with than Elfquest, and it stuck.
Well, and that you're here is testament to that. You're here at the Elfquest panel. One question that we used to get asked in the beginning was, why elves? And the answer is really very simple. Now you have comics that can feature any type of character that you want. They're anthropomorphics, there are all sorts of elves. They're close enough to human. They're humanoid. As Wendy said, they're designed very sneakily cute. Deceptively. But because they are humanoid, we can project ourselves into them. They look like us enough. And yet, with the long pointed ears and the feral features and the slanted eyes, there's a thing about elves. What did you call them? They're midway?
I always thought of them as midway between animals and angels. You know, they have that primal force of nature quality, especially the wolf riders. They are so bonded with their wolves that they actually based their tribal system on a wolf pack, and they run things within their tribe the way a wolf pack would run And that just was very exciting to me, the idea of being so close to animals and the way animals do things, because there's a purity to it. It's fierce, it's sometimes very ugly, it's ferocious, but it's honest and it's pure. And then there's the other half of the elves, which they seek to find. That is their quest, is what's their origin? Who are they really? Who were they before they got scattered into different tribes all over a world that they were never born to? And that other half of them is kind of angelic, sort of godlike almost. But they had to go on this long, long journey to find out about themselves.
So we started publishing Elfquest, and something happened. It was the times, it was the late 70s, the comic shop markets were just beginning to burgeon and increase. There was no internet, there was no social media, and word of mouth got out and Elfquest just exploded. We started selling in numbers that were competitive with some of Marvel and DC's titles. And this is a source of great and delicious irony to us, because the first series of Elfquest began in 1978, it ended in 1984. And remember, Marvel Comics said no to Elfquest back when we first approached them. Well, when Elfquest ended and they saw what our circulation figures were, they came to us and said, would you consider entering into an agreement with us to reprint Elfquest for our new epic line of comics, creator-owned comics? I love irony. I really, really do. Of course we'll have that conversation with you. And the nice thing about it is that Marvel got Elfquest onto newsstands, and so that arrangement got us a whole new audience. We've always said we're independent, but we're not isolationists. We'll work with partners that bring new resources to us that we don't have. And we're very happy to do so. I'm wondering if it might be time to see if anybody's going to ask that question. We always open it up to questions, but there's one question that we have been asked on and off over the years, and I'm wondering if anybody in the audience here can guess what that question might be. Yeah.
When is there going to be a movie?
Kill that man.
When is there going to be an Elfquest movie / cartoon show / animated series / live action movie / streaming series?
All right.
What, you want to take this one?
And I want to do it as fast as I can. The answer to that question has been, is, and will be until further notice. Until the right film or television entity comes to us that really, really gets it, that doesn't come to us and say, oh, we love Elfquest and here's how we're going to change it. Until the right entity comes to us and says, we're going to respect the material, we're going to tell it the way you told it, and people are going to be able to recognize the characters. Until that happens, we would rather have no movie than a bad movie. So, Disney, and believe me, we've been everywhere. You know, people go, but what about Netflix? What about Amazon? We have talked to everybody. Disney was very, very honest with us when we had a meeting with them. They said, oh, sure, we're interested. But you give it to us and you will never see it again. We will Disneyfy it, you will not recognize it, and you will not own it. I don't know why they were so honest with us. Perhaps they weren't that interested, so they could afford to be honest. But I'm deeply grateful that they were. Disney dollars are lovely, aren't they? You know, very alluring. But when they told us that, you know, that's pretty much been our experience in Hollywood, that we align with someone who options Elfquest, and they say, we're going to do this, 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 and we're going to be faithful and all that. And then that starts to change. And so before the worst can happen, we back out of the agreement. So we are basically the reason why there's not been an Elfquest movie or TV series up to this point.
Well, in all fairness to us, it's not necessarily always that clear-cut. When, well, the first studio to option Elfquest was an outfit in Canada called Nelvana. They did a bunch of TV holiday specials, The Devil and Daniel Mouse. They did Rock and Rule. Julie 8, yes, there was a robot thing. Well, anyway, they approached us, and they had no clue about what they were doing. They wanted to, we asked them, well, these are 4-foot-tall characters who ride wolves, and they said, we'll dress up children in pointed ears and we'll put them on big dogs. And that was the first, and then you said...
No, it was worse than that. They immediately said, we will dress up these children and put them on trained wolves. That was the phrase they used, trained wolves. And I said, excuse me, you can train a wolf to do anything it wants, including eating a child. So...
All right, so that... then there was the experience with Disney, and as Wendy said, they were very straightforward with us, and we've known people who have sold properties to Disney, and that's it. It goes into a vortex, and now, for 4 years in the early 2000s, I told you that we licensed Elfquest to Marvel. In the early 2000s, we licensed Elfquest to DC Comics because they were very interested. DC was connected with Warner Brothers, and we thought, oh, you know, maybe we get our foot in the door. DC had Elfquest as a comic book property for 4 years. They did not know how to market it. We got the license back, and immediately Warner Brothers came to us and said, we're interested, we'd like to option it. Now the irony there is, had DC Comics kept Elfquest, Warner Brothers could have had the option for a lot less than they ended up having to pay us. They optioned Elfquest for a period of 2 and then 4 years, right at the time when Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings was really making a big splash in theaters. The Hobbit was coming up as well. And we thought, oh, how great. They know how to do fantasy movies. They're going to do right by us. What we didn't know about Hollywood would fill a book. Because they were not, as it turned out, we learned, they were not the least bit interested in developing Elfquest for a movie. They optioned Elfquest so that they could keep it off the market. So nobody else could option it and perhaps make a movie that would compete with The Hobbit. So we made some good option movie. We lost 4 years of our lives, and that's another aspect to Hollywood that you won't find in the school books.
Basically, we got Swan Princessed. You guys know the Swan Princess movie? And Disney released Lion King the week that the Swan Princess came out, just to crush it. So Disney knows how to put the kibosh on things, and apparently Warner Brothers does too.
Yeah, so it's not as easy as saying, why don't you talk to Disney? Why don't you have an animated movie? Why don't you go to Netflix? Why don't you go to Amazon? It is complicated, it is a little bit nasty and cutthroat. Now, to balance all this doom and gloom, well, first of all, we thought for a long time we wanted an animated cartoon. At the very beginning, we wanted something lush and beautiful like Disney did with Sleeping Beauty. I mean, that's the epitome of 2D cell hand-drawn animation as far as we're concerned. And we thought, my God, you know, with Wendy's artwork and that kind of treatment, this is going to be. The more we have learned as time has gone by is that also Elfquest has kept on going. It's a big, sprawling story now. How do you compress a big, epic fantasy into an 80-minute animated film? And believe me, we tried rewriting and rewriting the script from 6 different directions. It's difficult, and none of it ever really worked. Now, you have streaming services, you have Amazon Prime, you have HBO Plus, you have Apple, you have Netflix. And a little tiny thing you may have heard of called Game of Thrones became the poster child for long-form serialized storytelling, and we began to think, well, Elfquest is very long-form. Instead of trying to cram things into a 2-hour movie, why don't we readjust our thinking and do it in sequential chunks? And without giving anything away, that is the direction of the conversations that we have been having for the last, what, year and a half? Would you say? Okay, so the last year. So where's the Elfquest movie, which was the instigating question? There may not be an Elfquest movie. If there is an Elfquest series that goes 2, 3, 5, 8 seasons, I think we can live with that.
And we promise not to end it like Game of Thrones. Elfquest has always been a continuing thing for us. We never stopped telling the story. And we went on to do many different story arcs. We did Siege of Blue Mountain, Kings of the Broken Wheel, Discovery, just on and on into the final quest, which resolved our hero Cutter's hero's journey. And now we are doing what we would call a coda to that story called Stargazers Hunt, which is about what happens to Skywise, Cutter's best friend, after Cutter's journey is complete. And it's very exciting, very moving, very emotional, and I'm going to give it away that we are just 13 pages away from finishing Stargazers Hunt, which was to be an 8-part comic miniseries. But Dark Horse Comics, our publisher, brought out Stargazers Hunt as the first half of it as 4 floppies and then as a collected volume. Volume 2 will be coming out this spring that finishes the tale. There will not be the floppies because, you know, COVID and things have changed with comic publishers and their schedules are different now. So the story will definitely be finished, but in volume form rather than in individual comic form. And once that's done, we fully expect a fabulous thing to be out and available to audiences. Blink, blink. You know what I'm talking about.
There are several things you could be talking about. Why don't you? You've got the mic.
No, I want you to announce this.
What am I announcing? Oh, that. we have irons in the fire. Recently, and I mean really recently, we have, I won't say stumbled onto, because there was a certain amount of homework being done, but this is an incredibly satisfying alternative for us to the question of when's the movie coming out, because we are ears deep already in production. This is not potential, this is not theoretical, this is happening, it's being worked on, the money has been raised for Elfquest the audio movie, which is, people say, what's an audio movie? And the easiest way is to explain that for me is, imagine your classic radio dramas where you'd have some actors and you'd have some rudimentary sound effects, and you'd have a script. Well, imagine that on triple doses of steroids. The first story chunk of Elfquest has been adapted. A newly adapted script has been written. Wendy is the script editor for this series, and it is a series. We have partnered with an amazing audio house called Stargazers Audio Media. They have gotten 40 or 50 voice actors, some of whom you know because of their voice acting, some of whom you know because they've been on TV. I'm going to, I just can only say so many words out my mouth in a sequence. How many of you saw Disney's movie Atlantis, The Lost Kingdom? Do you remember Princess Kida, voiced by Cree Summer, who's also doing a lot of other stuff? She is doing the voice of Saba. How many of you are familiar with Star Trek? Oh God, I don't know all the Star Treks. Which one was Tuvok on? Voyager. He's doing, what's he doing?
Sun Toucher.
He's doing Sun Toucher. Robert Picardo, your cranky holographic doctor. He's doing Pick Nose. Can you picture this? We've got actors and actresses from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We have got, do we have Supernatural?
Oh my God, his name. Yeah, no, not that.
Oh God.
This is one of those brain things. But he's an actor on Supernatural. Is our Skywise.
So, point being, we didn't go to the local high school and get a bunch of drama club people. These are well-known names. The director is so into this. We have an incredible composer who lives in Germany, who is doing music for Elfquest, the likes of which you have never heard before.
He trained with Hans Zimmer.
So imagine a Hans Zimmer-esque sound track to a movie that has everything except visuals. And the reason for this is when you put on headphones or you put on speakers and you lean back and you close your eyes and this thing comes on, you see the movie that you want to see. Everybody may see it differently, but everybody's going to see the movie that they want to see.